On today's show, we take a look at the Niners draft over the weekend and who we should be most excited about as Niner fans. Remember, as always, you can listen to this episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from. You're inside the Johnny Dell Football Academy. Hello again, Niner faithful, and welcome to the Johnny Dell Football Academy podcast on the channel that's trying to answer the whys and hows of the game. As always, I am Adam Marino, joined by Mr. Johnny Dell. And before he tells us about his weekend, I do have some house cleaning items to take care of. Number one, we have been absent because Johnny's not been feeling the greatest, and I am so thankful that we are back at it as he is feeling and looking much better. And another thing that we want to take care of, as Dr. Steve is always there for us. If you are watching live, he is on it. Make sure you hashtag JD as we are trying to up the algorithm. So if you are watching live on YouTube, remember to hashtag JD. Thank you for all the love. We have a big show to get into, so much to talk about. Johnny, how was your weekend?
Oh, it was good. I was feeling much better. I was on steroids and antibiotics all last week. It's this crazy Alabama pollen season and everything. I was in a bad way. I was dizzy all week. I couldn't barely drive. It was just, yeah. So I missed all of the faithful last week. We were planning on doing a couple shows leading up to the draft, and it just didn't work out. I was just not in a good way. It would have been a very entertaining stream. For those people who know me, I tend to get a little loopy when I get sick. People usually think I've had a few, and so it would have been a very entertaining, if not very on topic stream had I jumped in. But I'm glad to have made it through the draft weekend, and here we are to talk about the 49ers and 2 long nights of waiting.
Man, so tell me what we're going to get into all things Niners. And as Don Dell is there to show a little love. um, I'm curious, what was your biggest then takeaway besides the Niners, as we'll get into right away? What was your number one thing that kind of jumped out to you when you look at the draft as a whole?
Well, so the draft as a whole, one thing that I was really excited about coming out. I mean, and we kind of knew this was going to happen going in, was the Panthers picking Bryce Young and number one overall. I think the Panthers have the chance to really be the team out of the NFC South this year. I think when you look at what their defense had last year, their defense was not bad. Their defense was actually pretty decent. They have some good pieces there. There were some guys, I remember when I watched the film before we played them, I was actually pretty impressed with their defense. And I kept thinking, man, if their offense wasn't just absolutely horrible, they would be a lot better. And so, thinking about it, I'm going, really, they have the ability and the chance now to actually do something, and that division is wide open. And so I think if you look at a team around the NFL that can make the biggest leap next year is in that has something to do with the 49ers. I think the Panthers are it. Other part would be just how irritating Russell Wilson is, because even in leaving the Seahawks, he freaking gave them an incredible draft because they had picks to get from the trade that of trading him away. And he was so bad in Denver that he gave Seattle some really good draft position, which was a team that obviously we met in the playoffs last year, and it felt like they just took a big step this year. So that was rather frustrating. And then the Eagles, a team coming off the Super Bowl that you would hope that they would, start seeing the dismantling of that window and everything, just got some big pieces to continue their dominance in the NFL and really solidify and replace and replenish the cupboards of their defense. They were able to get my draft crush, major draft crush. I've been saying him all ever since the Senior Bowl here. I think I talked about him the night of our first practice, that you said, who stuck out to you, and I said a kid, Sidney Brown, and I kept saying this whole time, people who've been watching the channel know, I kept saying I think he's going to go high third. I think that's where he's going to end up. The 49ers, if he's there, they need to trade up and get him. He was a player I was in love with. I kept comparing him to Talanoa Hufanga, and to see him go to the Eagles made me sick. It really did.
You,
I,
uh,
I,
oh,
yeah, he texted me, and I was literally just almost pale when the Eagles selected him. I'm going. I would have been okay with almost any other team right now than the Eagles, especially after the freaking Eagles fans and the way they were after the NFC Championship game to get that guy. So, that was kind of my impressions from around the NFL after the draft.
they even the stupid Eagles, they even got the replacement after trading us their great player. They exactly drafted the guy to even take his place. They're like, "Oh, we're good." Like, oh, geez.
Yeah, they got Jalen Carter. I mean, who's had some character issues,
Right.
but and of course that you could say that about the entire Eagles fan base. So yeah, that just fits.
Right. So yeah, frustrating. I agree with you that, man, it was tough to see like so many good players. Like, how many Georgia players are the Eagles going to take? Like, when everyone respects those players, it's like, oh gosh, it was like just a right to the heart. So then, speaking of like to the heart, like there was some picks for our beloved 49ers that definitely made us go, hmm. And I'll be honest. So let me just start because we already had some some comments earlier saying from Eric Norris. He was at work during the draft. His coworker told him that the Niners took a kicker in the third round, and he thought legit he was messing with me. And I understand that the tone, and we talked a little bit before the show, the tone is a little head scratcher. And here's what I'll say. There are many instances in which a freaking kicker had ruined, like, the from a double doink to the dude with the Cowboys, to just famous situations where you think, man, if you had a lights out kicker, an Adam Vinatieri in his prime, a Justin Tucker, if you had someone like that. Now, and it wasn't as bad as the Raiders getting Janikowski, which, by the way, Janikowski ended up being a pretty darn good football player. So in that tone, I'm not all that upset, and here's why. We already do have a good roster. Did we get an offensive tackle? No. Are we unsure of what we're doing there? Yes. But like, okay, overall, I don't know if I'm as upset as everyone else is. And maybe I am that stupid, and ignorance is bliss, y'all. But tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, Lace is out, Dan. Um, I, I think it wouldn't have been as bad if we had a first or second round pick. I think part of that comes to why that's such a is, you have all of this hype leading up to the draft. You have the entire draft pre stuff. You watch through the entire first round just in case the 49ers trade up. It wasn't most likely wasn't going to happen. People were, speculating, were we going to trade Trey Lance or Brandon Ayuk and move into the first round? I didn't think that was going to happen. It was just one of those of I was really trying to see, what was the NFL doing? And so you watch through the first night, and then you're watching through the majority of the second night. And and then it was you pick a safety. Okay, we trade up for a safety, which is kind of a head scratcher move usually, but I wasn't that confused by trading up for a safety. And the reason why is I feel like they probably had two safeties that were on their board, and that was Sidney Brown and Jair Brown. Okay, and once Sidney Brown went, they said we can't wait around for another safety. We need to go get this because they red shirt guys. They do this. This is part of the process. So they're looking at not the 2023 starting safety. They're looking at the 2024 starting safety when Tayshaun Gibson is no longer there. And so Brown is a guy that they're going to bring in redshirt, maybe using sub packages like Talanoa Hufanga was used, and then play. And we'll talk about him a little bit more in a sec, because I there's some reasons I'm very very solid reasons of why I think they got him. But so there's this trade up for a safety. Okay, we don't really need a safety, and we're looking at that draft. You're hoping for that piece to push you over the top, right? Because we haven't gotten there. So what we're hoping for is that push you over the top piece. You've waited 2 nights, and here the 49ers are with their second selection in this draft, and it's a kicker. I think that's what really got everybody. If we had a first round pick that was a sexy pick and that helps you push over the top, sure. If you have a second round pick that you can, that's similar situation. Okay, yes. If your first pick isn't trading up for a safety that's going to redshirt, yes, it's when you have, this is what happens, and you've had all this expectation the whole night, and a kicker out of Michigan. It's just one of those things that is frustrating. But I agree with you. When you have a really solid kicker, that makes decisions a lot easier for the head coach. That makes decisions of whether you're going for it at the 40-yard line a lot easier for the head coach. Okay, that makes planning your offense better. We've all seen how many, like, what would the Ravens' record be without Justin Tucker? Yes, Lamar Jackson just got this massive contract, but Justin Tucker's right leg has won them a lot of games. So, everyone doesn't really care about the kicker until they care about the kicker. And then they really care about the kicker. So, it is something. And again, just like Kyle Shanahan said, they didn't have a 4th round pick. They didn't think that Jake Moody was going to make it to the 5th round. So it was, let's get him while he's here. This is something, if you believe he's going to be your kicker for the next 10 years, then that is a worthwhile investment. It's very frustrating as fans when you're hoping for that piece to put you over the top. You've been waiting 2 nights through the draft, and now you have a kicker, which is because it doesn't feel like it's something that moves the needle. It keeps the needle in place. But it was an absolutely necessary pick to keep the needle from falling back.
Right. I see, it's like we have high expectations, and you don't need a kicker in the third round. And I totally understand. Let's go through the picks kind of individually. So the safety out of Penn State was the number 87 pick overall. Now he finished with 10 career interceptions at Penn State, which is tied for 12th in the program history. And he also posted 234 career interception return yards, which is the most at that school since 2000. So he can make some plays after he gets the ball, which he can show he can take away the ball as well. There's obviously going to be your flashy plays that you can find when they show the tape. As always, I'm excited to see, once they really get him in our locker room and that kind of thing. But what do you know about him as well, and what kind of piques your interest the most?
So one thing I think we've noticed, especially from the safety position, is what the 49ers are starting to value there. One thing I've been thinking about is, people always, when we go back to the 2021 NFC Championship game, and people always say, well, Jaquiski's Tart dropped interception it didn't cost the game because, there were still, so many minutes left on the clock, and Jimmy Garoppolo still didn't get it done. I always look at, okay, there was Jimmy Garoppolo they were still willing to bring him back the next year, which was last season. They had an absolute chance to bring Jaquiski Tart back. He was a free agent after Jimmy Ward got hurt, and there was questions about the starting safety position, and they chose not to bring Jaquiski Tart back. And now they're picking a kid who, when the ball was there, he took advantage of it. Is that you're seeing they're valuing ball skills from the safety position. They're valuing turnovers. Dropped interceptions matter. And so, that's the number one thing that you see from him, is that there's productivity for opportunities when they're there. Not all the interceptions are these amazing, just he's making a driving play. Some of them are on overthrown balls, underthrown balls, but he's not losing the opportunities when they're there. He's not dropping arm punts. and he's in the right position. He's rarely wrong. He's a sound player, and he's a good run fit defender. Now he did have some missed tackles. He needs to tighten up some of that technique, but he doesn't shy away from it. And that was another thing you saw as a theme throughout this draft was what's up to my guy CG Ruthless in the chat? Good content creator. We've done some stuff before. We need to get together again, CG. But that he was a guy that I think in a lot of ways he was like a 2A, 2B, I guess, to Sidney Brown. Sidney Brown was my draft crush. He was like a Talanoa Hufanga to me. I think Jair Brown is a guy that is in a lot of ways very similar to that. He's going to fit this system really well. We're going to play a lot more man coverage under Steve Wilkes, and so you really need those safeties to stay over the top, stay disciplined, and that's the biggest thing you see with Jair Brown is that he's a disciplined safety. He doesn't bite on a lot of cheese. He plays within the scheme well.
So what I want to do is putting in the chat his name and school he went to, and I'm going to put your grade. So what at this point at the 87th pick, keep in mind we did trade up to get this pick. What would you give it? And then I want the chat to go in and give their grade as well. So what would you like me to type in here?
I would give the grade a B plus, and the reason why is because I think he's going to be a redshirt guy that has the potential to be a long term difference maker starter at the safety position. And so he's a guy that you can use in a lot of different ways. You can bring him off the edge, you can bring him on the blitz, you can use him deep, you can use him in the box. He doesn't play in the box as much. He didn't as much in college. I think he spent about 75% of his time in the deep middle, but he can come down and play in the box, and it fits what we're going to do with Steve Wilkes. So, I think it was a pick that absolutely made sense and wasn't to me overvalued or a reach in any way, because Sidney Brown was the first safety that went, and it was in the third round, middle of the third. So the NFL is not valuing safeties really high, so we were able to get a good value pick, and not a guy that's not going to have to be rushed onto the field, and it wasn't a reach. So hey, super chat, thank you so much, Lisa, for the super chat. Big supporter of the channel. Much love, Lisa.
We were excited about the draft for sure as well. Thank you so much, Lisa. Go in the chat and make sure you give your grade for that first pick. Mr. Young puts a B in there as well. So one thing I want to ask you regarding, the kicker. He's our next pick, still in the third round at pick number 99. Jake Moody from Michigan. If we don't agree with the placement of the pick, we obviously do like him. I mean, he appeared in all 14 games at Michigan as the team's place kicker and kickoff specialist, and he converted a single season record of 29 field goals out of 35, including 10 from 40 or more, and going 60 of 60 for PATs with 66 touchbacks on 102 kickoffs. And as my Michigan friends, as I live in the Midwest and I live in Big Ten country, my Big Ten friends were ready to tell me about all the players from Penn State, from Purdue. We'll get into Purdue later. And all my Michigan friends were telling me he's not afraid to tackle, as he had 3 tackles and 1 solo. So I know you don't agree with the number that he was drafted, pick number 99, but let's get into it. And what can you tell me about Jake Moody?
I didn't know much about Jake Moody. I mean, I was not scouting kickers from Michigan before the draft. That wasn't, high on my radar. The best part about it was just how hyped up it made Rich Eisen on the NFL Network. If you were watching the NFL Network draft coverage, and you saw how excited Rich Eisen got that the 49ers picked a kicker from Michigan in the third round. So, that part will boost it from a C plus to a B minus for me. I can't. I understand everything with the thought process of the draft. of where they picked him and why. I just cannot get on board with a kicker in the third round. With a kicker before pick 100, and I know it was right on the bubble, but I
Right,
just
right.
cannot be okay with picking a kicker before. Like if you got to trade back into the fourth round with 2 5th-round picks, I would have been more okay with that than picking a kicker in the third round. And another super chat. Thank you so much, Dwayne. Bang bang Niner gang. Absolutely. Thank you so much for the super
Yes,
chat.
sir. So,
But yeah,
what is
so
your
I'm gonna.
grade?
I would say C plus, but I'll give it B minus just because of how excited it made Rich Eisen, and that kind of made the draft coverage a little more entertaining.
Yeah, it did for sure. I was texting my buddies, "We got a kicker from Michigan," and they were like, "Let's go!" They don't care about the Niners at all, but they were just excited. So, okay, let's move forward as we don't need to spend any more time on a kicker, and hopefully Shanahan does not have to spend any more time thinking about whether to go for it or not, as he has his guy.
And
Uh,
all I have to say though is that Jed York should have his Twitter privileges revoked for like 2 weeks after what he did. I mean, because I don't know if you saw it, but he tweeted like 2 minutes before we picked Jake Moody. He said, "Let's kick this draft off right."
oh man,
Like this is no time
that,
for dad jokes, Jed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Come on, Jed, we got Super Bowls to win. Okay, so let's get to a guy that may help us. Uh, with a Super Bowl run is a tight end from Alabama who most people are going to be high on Alabama players and selected just a few picks later, 101st overall. And this dude totaled 30 receptions for 377 yards and 4 touchdowns. And so I mean, he did win the Mackey Award, or he was named to the watch list for the Mackey Award. He didn't actually win, but it's only to the top tight ends that even get looked at. And the one thing that I noticed was that he was raw because he has not played that position for a long time. But if there's someone that you'd want to play behind and learn the game from, I don't know of too many, especially on the blocking end, because like we have said over and over, we talk about the whys and hows of the game. If you do not block in this offense, then you can go somewhere else. So if he can really fine tune that and get good at it, then I'll be excited. Are you excited about Cameron, and what's the pronunciation?
Latu.
Latu.
Cameron. So, okay. Cameron Latu was a guy that I've been a little high on, and a lot of people have not really understood. Um, I'm gonna go on a show tomorrow morning. We're gonna have a live stream, a 3-prong live stream with myself, Wayne Breezy, and John Chapman. We're all gonna stream it on our channels. We're getting together, and John and I are. Everyone's gonna be able to hear me really sell this pick to John because he hated this pick. I mean, he was so frustrated. He wanted a bunch of other tight ends first. He had him graded as a 5th or 6th round pick. Has been scratching his head, and so he told me, he's like, "All right, buddy, when we do this, you're gonna have to explain why you were high on him." So I'm gonna talk a little bit more about it tomorrow morning. Morning for West Coast time. We're gonna be on. I think it's gonna be 10 a.m. West Coast time, Pacific time, but what you have to understand with Cameron Latu is that this is a 49ers culture pick. Okay. This is not the it's going to make sense to the rest of the league kind of pick. This is fits what they want. So they have drafted guys in the past that would be the eyeball test guys at tight end, right? And we haven't had a really solid number 2 tight end yet. They're looking for that more of that mentality of what they have from a George Kittle is what I think they're really looking for. And maybe maybe it's the Alabama bias of being close to Tuscaloosa that I was,
Maybe.
really high on Cameron Latu. But here's the thing: is that Latu, while while he sometimes struggled with the execution and technique in his block, it was never from a lack of willingness to engage. There's some tight ends you watch them and you can tell they do not enjoy blocking. They don't want to block. Travis Kelce would be like a perfect example. You see him try and block sometimes, and it looks like he's giving about a D minus effort because he really just wants to catch the ball and run with it. When you see Cameron Latu, you see a kid that is willing to do whatever, and he has not, like you said, has not played the tight end position for very long. He was a converted defensive end. Okay. And some of his athletic measurables this year did not grade well. He's been struggling with some injuries, hamstring injury throughout this kind of offseason and leading up to the draft. I think that is affected. He's more athletic than you would think based on the measurables. He's faster than you think based on his 40. I think he runs faster than that. What the things you see is he's willing to make tough catches in traffic. He does not shy away from contact. Now he doesn't break a lot of tackles, but he doesn't sit there and dance around. He's not a mess around guy. He's going to catch the ball and get upfield. That's what the 49ers want because Kyle Shanahan, if you look at everything that he does and so much of what they do in the game, that so much of the passing game is an extension of the run game. They're not asking all their guys to break 20 tackles to get an explosive. They want you to catch the ball at a spot, turn upfield and go. And he will make sure that everything else is in place for that. And if you can do that, you will be very successful in this offense. And that is what Latu shows, that he can catch it and go. He can make catches in traffic. He's a big frame guy, big wingspan. He's got height. He had a lot of red zone touchdowns. He is a massive red zone target. And what I'm really looking at, again, we're talking about red shirt years. I really see him as not necessarily a guy that's going to be big this year, but I think he's going to be a guy that is going to take over that Juwan Jennings role in 2024. I see him as a guy that you can put him on the move and they're going to let him work on his route running, work on everything, work on learning these positions. And now they're going to start coming out in some hybrid positionless packages with him being in that slot because he's taller than Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings isn't really that much faster than him, and he's able to find the holes in zones well. And I think that's going to create some big matchup problems. If he was being drafted to be an inline tight end, I would hate the pick. But I think he's going to be a chess piece and to move around to create mismatches. I think that's how he's going to be used. And when you look at the potential of his frame, his mindset, and his willingness and the way he attacks the game, I think he fits everything that the 49ers do. That's why I've liked Cameron Latu. I remember when I was at the Senior Bowl, I was sitting there with Wayne Breezy, and Payne Durham was there, and he was smoking almost everybody in man coverage drills. He was the best receiving tight end there. I mean, Luke Musgrave was there, and he recorded, I think, the fastest time of any ball carrier at one of the practices. But I was more impressed with Payne Durham as a receiver. But I remember I turned to Wayne, and because he said, "Well, do you see the 49ers picking Payne Durham?" I said, "No, if they're picking a tight end here, I see Cameron Latu as fitting the 49ers better." That's what I said at the Senior Bowl, and sure enough, here we are, and we drafted him in the 3rd round.
So what's your I see in the chat, I don't know if people agree,
I
just
don't
like
think people are going to agree with me. People
yeah,
are not going to agree with me. I'm going to give it a B plus. I'm going to give it a B plus, just because it's a guy that I've been telling people for a little while that I would like to see the 49ers get. And I know, chat, you're going to roast me. You're not going to agree. It's okay. I still love you. Still love me back.
and
We're all good.
you did tweet it as the draft was going. Out of the players that were available, he was one of your 3, and then we did pick him up.
Yeah,
So
and because one of the other ones went before we even picked. I said I was okay with Dion Henley. I think it was Byron Young and Cameron Latu, and Dion Henley got picked like 2 spots before. Which was I would not be surprised if Dion Henley was there, if we may not have even picked him over Cameron Latu, based upon the D Winters pick. But we'll get to that one.
for sure. Before we move forward, another reminder, guys, be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell because we love having you in the chat. And the way that you get in the chat is you have to know about the chat. The way that you know about the chat is you have to have a ding notification tell you. So Make sure you tell your friends, share with family, let everyone know. Please like and subscribe. We are trying to grow the channel. How fun will it be when the channel hits 20,000 subscribers? Going to be amazing. Don't have a ton that we need to get there yet. So please, guys, thank you for the support. Let's continue on with the 155th overall pick into the fifth round. We did get a defensive back out of South Alabama, Darrell Luter Jr., and he got first team All Sun Belt Conference after leading the Jaguars with 4 interceptions and 10 pass breakups, 21 tackles, 2 for a loss in 10 starts during the 2021 season. And as a senior, recorded 42 tackles, an interception, and 7 pass breakups in 13 starts. What do you like or dislike about the pick at 155 here?
USA is from the University of South Alabama. That's on their all their banners down there. That's where the Senior Bowl was at the University of South Alabama. But no, this is a Wilkes pick. When you look at switching from D'Amico Ryans to Steve Wilkes, Wilkes is going to run more man coverage than D'Amico Ryans did. Okay, D'Amico Ryans ran zone coverage more than any other defensive coordinator in the league last year. And Wilkes ran man coverage. I think he was probably about midway in the league in man coverage. And we're going to run man coverage probably a good 10% higher tick rate of man coverage this season than we did last season. Darrell Luter is a man coverage corner. When you look at him, he's a kid that plays really well in that. He was at the Senior Bowl and he did really well in the one-on-one drills. Now when it came to some of the zone fits or zone matches against route concepts, he struggled a little bit there, and sometimes doesn't have his eyes in the right spot. Sometimes his feet aren't in the right spot with that. But he's a guy that is a man coverage guy. He's going to be best in a press man role. And so again, it's a red shirt season. This is a guy that you're looking at, can he fit this scheme and can it be down the line? And he fits the prototypical corner bill. He's got really good length. That was the thing that really stood out seeing him there at the Senior Bowl was how lanky he was. And when he would match up with the receivers across from it almost reminded you of when you'd see like Nnamdi Asomugha line up against guys, how physically imposing he was from a size and length standpoint. And that's what Darrell Luter has, is that he's got a lot of length, really big wingspan. And so, I think he has everything to be a good man coverage corner, which we are going to need more in the Wilkes system. And but he's got to have some time to learn the nuances of zone. And so again, that's why I think it's another red shirt season. I think he's a guy that they're looking at competing for a starting position, not necessarily this year, but maybe in 2024. We'll see how far Diamador Lenore comes, or as can he be, that piece down the road. And then as a backup that can play more man coverage. That was something that we struggled with coming off the bench this season, is playing man coverage whenever either Charvarius Ward or Demo went down, especially after Emmanuel Mosley went down. So, I really like the pick. I would give it a solid B. I can't give it a B plus because again, it's one of those smaller school guy. I don't know, how much you can say it's an absolute win. But I like it from this, and you also see he makes too many arm tackles to me. When I saw him, he doesn't want to get in there and tackle with his body, but he's not unwilling to tackle. And I think that's something that you've seen the 49ers change ever since Ahkello Witherspoon, is that Ahkello Witherspoon, it was pretty well known in the coverage during training camps and everything, that he was not a guy to get in there and really mix it up in the run game. And I think the 49ers ever since then have been looking at corners. If you don't tackle, you don't get on the field. Corners that tackle is a big deal for them. And so he's willing to get in there. It wasn't that they're not looking for finished products at these. They're looking for, are you willing to do this? But physically, he's got good speed, 4.46 40, I believe was the time he ran the combine. So he's got the good speed, big length. He has everything that you really want from an eye test for a corner.
For sure. I want to go backwards only because in the chat I want to address some of this. Is the reason we love going live is going into the chat, guys. And so earlier, Graham Nguyen asked, "Does it concern you about being converted tight end?"
To me, no. There's also another aspect of this that we have to remember. There was only like I think 3 tight ends that George Kittle out of college that George Kittle invited to the tight end university, and Cameron Latu was one of them. I have a feeling that George Kittle spoke very highly of him coming out of there. So there's that element that we're not always privy to of how much did George Kittle have an effect on this and saying, look, this guy's got the mentality he's got because George Kittle's talked about this that for him playing tight end and blocking, it's not even as much. I mean, George Kittle is not the most physically imposing tight end out there, but he has the mentality to love to drive a man's soul into the dirt. And if that's what Cameron Latu has, then he's got a good tutor to help show how to make that happen. And so I'm not worried about it at all. It's just I think it's something that's going to be interesting to see how he develops.
For sure. And Dr. Steve Brule, always a big supporter of us. 2 comments that I wanted to incorporate. Uh, You know, I half-heartedly joke when he says, "I don't believe in grading this early, complete mystery at the moment." Of course, but this is why we do it because it's May 1st. What else are we going to do? You have to talk about something. But then also um, wonders if Ambry Thomas out of Michigan, what's the deal there? Do you think that this is the beginning of the end, or do you see it go another way?
Well, they've tended to always pick a corner in the 5th round for the last number of drafts.
See who
So
sticks.
right, they go for scheme fits at the corner position, and that's what's interesting about this pick to me is that if you look in the past, like Diamador Lenore was more of a zone coverage guy that was picked in the 5th round, and now you're seeing more of a man coverage guy picked in the 5th round. When these are scheme fit corners that we get in the 5th rounds, I think Ambry Thomas needs to prove it at this point. He's going into his 3rd season. He needs to make a jump if he wants to stick on the team. Now, they didn't bring back Emmanuel Mosley, so there is a spot that's going to be open there to come in. But, Ambry Thomas is definitely on the outside looking in from my vantage point.
Let's get into pick number 173 as my excitement for a Georgia player. Am I a fan of the Georgia Bulldogs? In no way, shape, or form. Do I respect the program and respect most guys that come out of there? Absolutely. So, in round 5, pick number 173, Robert Beal Jr., as was mentioned. Oh no, we'll get into that. Cornelius Merritt. We'll get into those picks later. But Robert Beal Jr. out of Georgia played in all 15 games as a Bulldog, and starting 8 of those games in the 2022 season, had 26 total stops and 20 quarterback pressures in his senior year, 4 tackles and a quarterback strip sack in the championship win over LSU. I'm sure you like this guy, right?
Yeah, I like him from the athletic side. When he kind of fell off in the rotation there at Georgia, but you also have to remember Georgia's defensive line was just full of monsters this year. Okay, so
He would start anywhere else,
right,
and get
right.
more
He
playing
he would
time.
he would be a starter on a bunch of different defensive line. Now he's a little bit undersized, but here's again, it's about scheme fit and role players, especially at this point in the draft, and redshirt guys. Okay, so what are they redshirting him for? They're redshirting him for that NASCAR package of what we've seen, like an Arden Key play in, Charles Omenihu play in, where you get into that obvious pass rushing situation and you bring in a highly athletic defensive end type to come in and play in that interior, and you can run all these different stunts because if you look at his athletic profile, his 40 time, and we're talking a sub 4.5 40, he has the ability to turn, and he's got good bend. He has decent change of direction that you can now run all these different stunts. You can run these different twists, these things where you're having him looping around, and he has the speed to then keep up with quarterbacks that can do this, even mobile quarterbacks. So the things that it allows you to do scheme wise, he's not going to be the guy that you're looking to line up there and be the bookend pass rusher across from Nick Bosa. That's not what you're picking here in the 5th round. You're picking a role player, and that's actually why I really like this, is that you're looking for an exact physical type, a player type. And yeah, I'm blanking on the name, but the former first round pick that we picked up from uh, the Raiders, who we have right now, who's replaced Omenahu. He's on a 1-year deal. So this is who Beal is going to be replacing. He's going to be in 2024 in those kind of packages. That's what they're really looking for him from this, with the upside that he could turn into, because he has the physical traits to be a top edge rusher, but he's never really blossomed into that role. But I think if you ask him to do something very specific in a NASCAR package kind of a thing, you're absolutely going to get production. And so, that's his point. Again, you're not always looking at, are we picking the best absolute player that's out there? We're looking at the best player that fits what we do and what we want people to do. And we have specific roles for people to do and who can fit that role. That's been the Bill Belichick model for years, right? Is that Bill Belichick picks role players at value spots. And so, I think this is a situation where he can really thrive in that role. Again, people are wondering who's going to be that bookend pass rusher across from Nick Bosa. I really think that they are sold on that Drake Jackson will be that guy. If not, then, obviously there's been some contract restructurings. They may be looking at bringing in another veteran pass rusher. That's possible. I would not love that just from a salary cap perspective of looking at where we're going in sustainability, but that is an option that they may be exploring. But I think if they don't do that, then they are absolutely sold that Drake Jackson will be the guy. I mean, they invested a 2nd round pick in him. Yes, he fell off at the end of the year last year, but that doesn't mean that they're ready to give up on him. So we shouldn't be either. Again, remember, it's about red shirt seasons.
Right. That's what we do. We've talked about that a lot. As we talk speed rushing, is a speed rusher the key to unlocking the pass rush, and wouldn't that change the pocket's dynamic?
For me, it's not just about having a speed rusher. I think if you just have a speed guy, there's ways that teams can account for that. I think you have to have somebody that's just going to be an effective rusher. Whether they win by power or whether they win by speed or whether they win by a combination of the two, they just have to be able to get the job done. And I think that's what the 49ers think, is they don't care necessarily how you get it done. They want you to get it done. And that's why, again, you see these NASCAR packages, is that they're looking at, they will do whatever they need to do and get whoever they need on the field in the matchups they need to get it done, whether that's by speed or power. It doesn't matter to me. And I think it's going to be, again, I think the addition of Hargrave is going to be a lot more to unlocking our pass rush than even another bookend pass rusher. I think if Drake Jackson comes in and gives the same kind of production that Ebucom gave us, throwing in the addition of Hargrave, you're going to have a monster pass rush. That rush up the middle that Hargrave will provide is going to be an absolute game changer for this defense.
The biggest thing that quarterbacks want to do when there's an edge rushing them is step up. And if they cannot do that because of the push that we get, then that is the game changer. So for sure. And you think of, these conversations that we're having right now on the defensive line, you don't think they're important? Ask Tom Brady and ask the New York Giants. That single-handedly, you could say, was the number one factor in beating a team that was about to go 18-0. So that is a huge deal, and that's why we're excited, because of all the different guys that we can throw in a rotation and get after the quarterback and make that the offensive coordinator rethink his job. So what is your grade for Robert Beal Jr.?
I'm gonna give him a solid B. Maybe even a B plus. I don't want to get too homeristic here and drinking the Kool-Aid, but I like it. I really do. I think at a 5th round pick, I'll give it a solid B plus. Just because of the the value. I think it's somebody that fits the system of what we do. If it was, we had a desperate need for an edge rusher, we didn't have Drake Jackson on the team, and we didn't have any other options. I would say, not really, but I'm cool with it.
So these next couple picks is what I know Cornelius was excited for. So let's get into the number 216th pick overall in round 6. D Winters, and TCU is one of those teams that people had their eye on because they just did well last year, but he appeared in 48 games over his career, totaling 246 tackles with over 33 and a half for a loss, 12.5 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, 10 passes defended, 3 interception, one of them returned for a touchdown, named college football playoff semifinal defensive most valuable player after having 7 tackles, including 3 for loss and a 29-yard interception return for a touchdown and a pass breakup in the win versus Michigan. I'm out of breath.
So, first thing you see when you look at D Winters. So, one thing people always wonder, especially when you rattle off the stats, is why was he available in the 6th round? Well, the biggest knock on him coming out was his size for an inside linebacker. He's not a real big guy, and but here's where again I think this is an absolute system and scheme fit. If you look at let's take Dre Greenlaw. Dre Greenlaw is 6 foot and 229. He is an undersized linebacker. D Winters is 5'11 and 227. He is nearly the exact same size profile as Dre Greenlaw, and
I didn't realize that.
he is going to be playing the same spot as an outside linebacker. They're looking at him as being that Aziz Al-Shire. I think Aziz Al-Shire was right around 5'11, 229, 228, somewhere around there. Okay. It depends on, what he ate for breakfast. But and he's fast. He has a sub 4.5 40. He's got lots of speed, and he plays that he fits that physical traits role of that position really well. His style of play is the same way that you see from Dre Greenlaw, that you saw from Aziz Al-Shire. He is that fit perfectly for this system. So I love the pick. I think there's nothing there that really makes me go, oh man, I don't know. But he was a guy that to me, physical profile of what the 49ers like from their linebackers, and they ask their linebackers to do in the passing game, and the way they've built their team around the run game and how they do run fits. He absolutely is a perfect fit for that. He's going to be an Aziz Al-Shire clone or a Dre Greenlaw clone as far as physically, and fits exactly what we want from those positions. And so again, redshirt pick. Dre Greenlaw is only was signed a 2-year extension last year. I don't think he's going to be with the team past that extension. I really don't. I think he's going to be getting a big payday, and I don't think it's going to be with the 49ers. I don't think that they're going to invest that much into the linebacker position after having invested so much with Fred Warner. So to me, this is Dre Greenlaw's replacement down the line. They're going to look for him to be that 3rd, 4th rotational linebacker that will be there, and then be able to take over when Dre Greenlaw leaves. So, again, I love the pick. I think it's a great system fit. I think it's a great value pick. So I'm going to give it a solid B+.
Yeah, I think it's tough to give any Niner linebacker a bad grade, even the ones that didn't work out. As Dr. Buell says, even if they didn't work out at the time, they're great picks. I mean, you can't tell that someone's going to be that bad of a guy necessarily or retire early, but though they're always great picks, they know how to pick linebackers. So it's tough not to be excited about these guys because the organization knows what they're doing in spotting the talent at the linebacker position. So definitely going to be fun to watch. And again, fits our system with what we do and how we redshirt. So definitely agree there. As we get into another tight end, this I'll say was my head scratcher. I'm interested to see what you think. 247th pick overall in round seven, tight end Braden Willis out of Oklahoma. He appeared in 58 games over his career, totaling 75 receptions, just under 1,000 yards, 13 touchdowns with an average of 13.3 yards per catch. And he started all 13 games last year for 514 yards and 7 touchdowns on 39 receptions. And he also completed a pass for a touchdown. And his 7 receiving touchdowns tied for fifth most nationally among college tight ends. So some good stuff there, but I just don't know our depth. Like, what do you think is happening with our depth at the tight end position? And do you like the pick here at number 247?
To me, you already picked Cameron Latu earlier. You've already had, last season we had at one point like 5 tight ends that were looking like they're going to make the roster. Uh, it's one of those of I'm not loving the pick here. As far as are we really looking for another tight end here?
Right.
Even if you're redshirting a guy, it doesn't make sense to me. This is one that to me I give it a C minus. I don't see why I would have preferred an offensive lineman here.
No
You know,
kidding. That's what I wanted to.
that's what I would have really preferred to bring in something that would have, to me at least, compete to move the needle. To me, this was one that even if I'm trying to think about trusting the process and redshirt years, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So, I'm going to give it a C minus. It just didn't make a lot of sense.
He has a lot to prove for sure, and I will eat crow all day long, but this is the one pick that even more than Moody at in the third round that I just really was almost like the frustration almost was there for me a little bit because of everything that you just said. I echo that for sure. So I get it. Let's move on to another player where my phone was blowing up. You guys got our guy, the Michigan guy. So in the seventh round, pick 253, Ronnie Bell out of Michigan. And I will say I do watch a lot of Michigan games because of my crew. They 3 of them are Michigan fans, and so and they're usually competitive. The last 2 years, Michigan has been a pretty darn good football program, and we happen to know the head coach pretty well, right? So
I mean, I
I've
don't know him
watched.
personally, but
Well, right now, okay. Let me tell you a quick story. Actually,
oh,
in
that's
high
story time with
school,
Adam. Here we go.
yeah. Now here we go, guys. This is kind of interesting. In high school, I won second place a for videography. We put this project together where green screen was a big deal in 1998. Let me tell you. And so we won this award for having a guy with a green screen where it looked like he wasn't wearing anything, and we called him Nowhere Man because he was more about his clothes, and it made him look invisible because he was more like wanting to look like because he had Nike on and all this cool stuff. Anyway, we got to go to Indianapolis and we met Jim Harbaugh when he was known as Captain Comeback for the Colts. And I always thought, man, he was a brick house, but like really short. I was like, you're in the NFL? And he was, I mean, pretty good. If you remember, he was one throw away from beating the Steelers to get to the Super Bowl. And that was when I met him. And so it's always kind of funny when I look back. So I mean, I don't know him personally, but I did shake his hand. So that was kind of cool. And we got his wide receiver, Ronnie Bell, like I said, round seven, 253rd overall. And he had in 47 games in his career, 145 receptions, 2,269 yards with 9 touchdowns. In 2022, he started all 14 games, led the team with 62 receptions for 889 yards and 4 touchdowns. Also had 27 rushing yards with a touchdown. And again, because I've seen a lot of him, I'm kind of excited for him. I really am.
And so grading a seventh round pick, is always hard because, uh, I mean, can you blame a team for really who they pick in the seventh round? I mean, it's not like Brock Purdy's come out every year, and so. to me, okay, when there's a player here, because there's some negatives you can talk about him, but it's also, well, he's in the seventh round, so are we really that upset about some of these negatives? Because the biggest knock on the guy is that he really struggles against man coverage, and so to me, if I'm saying, well, if I want a receiver, I want a receiver who's going to be able to beat man coverage, because that's something that we have generally struggled with for the most part, from a number of our receivers over the years. But again, there's a reason. It's not like they're picking him in the second round and he's struggling separating against man coverage. So I can't really be upset with that. I think we're looking at a special teams guy, punt returner, kick returner. You're hoping for that, and maybe a guy that is somebody that has the right mentality to play what they want. That's going to be in that Z receiver role. That's going to be in that flanker role that you're going to be able to put with the tight end and do some stuff with, and see what can happen. I mean, does he make the team? We'll see. But I think they're going to bring him in to compete for that, and I can't hate the pick in the seventh round. So, I'd give it at least a B. I can't say that it's a home run or anything. For me, I'm not a Michigan guy. I'm sorry.
Completely fair.
But I can't also fault the team for necessarily picking the guy.
For sure. And my phone went crazy for a little bit as I live not too far from Purdue University. A lot of people are Saints fans over here in Indiana, strictly from Drew Brees, who went to Purdue. As a ex basketball coach, I used to coach LJ Lawrence Johnson, who just went to, I believe he is at Auburn now, but he played at Purdue, was their nose tackle, and I coached him in basketball years ago. So excited to see a Purdue guy, I suppose, as I live in the same state. But what can we say about the 255th overall pick in the seventh round? Jalen Graham. He played in 36 games and started all of them but one, and has a pair of defensive touchdowns, one from a fumble recovery and one from a pick six. And he's recorded 169 tackles, including 12 and a half for loss, three forced fumbles, and two sacks, along with the three picks. Again, in the seventh round, I kind of agree. Like, I don't know what are you supposed to say? Oh, I hate this pick. That wouldn't make any sense, right? But we'll see if he, special teams again, or we'll see if he makes some plays in preseason and like does some different things. Who knows?
Look, when you're a team like the 49ers with the roster they have, and you're a seventh round pick coming in, you better be a special teams ace to make this team as a seventh round pick, unless you're Brock Purdy. So that's really what we're looking for here. Are we looking? Is this going to be the guy that pushes us over the top? No. Is this the guy that can bring some value to special teams? And because special teams are always special until they aren't. That's what you're looking at. If he makes the roster, hey, it's a home run.
Right.
If on this roster, if a seventh round player makes the team, that's a home run. So to me, ah, if he doesn't make the roster, that's what I expect at this point. So
Right.
that's just where I'm at with it.
Yeah, that's probably a B at this point, right? I mean, there's just not enough to even, it's not that big a deal. Okay, so overall, what would you say? I'm gonna go first and give the draft overall a B minus. And I want you guys in the chat to go through a little bit and give just overall based on what you thought we needed, what we got, and all that. So again, and thank you to Dr. Steve Brule, asking for some love. And yes, make sure, guys, that you hit the like button, that you turn the notifications on. We love having you guys in the chat. It's the most fun thing. The most fun text that I send Johnny is, "Do you want to go live?" Like, and he's like, "That's a great idea." Like, I love that, man. Like, I get so excited when I know that we can go live and talk to you guys. And so thanks to Dr. Steve, who always makes us feel some love. So again, hit the notification, guys. Please tell all Niner fans that you know. We really want to explode this channel, get to 20,000 and beyond. So give your overall grades of the draft in the chat, And Johnny Dell, take it away. Last thoughts.
So my last thoughts, I have to fit this in here, because talking about the draft and players the one thing I love about the draft is seeing people achieve their dreams, and it's things that they've been working towards their entire life, all that work, all that hard effort to see it come true, and knowing that your dream of a perfectly manicured body is possible through Manscaped is just it's something that almost brings a tear to my eye because Manscaped does sponsor this channel and I have to remember to get it in there. They have been a great sponsor of the channel and they have extended us through June, and so I want to make sure I tell you that you can get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com right now using promo code JD49. And you can have a manicure body for every bit of body hair you have. There is the Lawnmower 4.0, which takes care of everything neck down. And it's got a long lasting lithium ion battery. It's waterproof, so you can take it in the shower. Has an ultra bright LED flashlight that helps you see all those hard to see places. And it has the legendary skin safe technology. Legendary skin safe technology. Because if there's one area you want skin safe technology, let me tell you, it is when you are taking care of body hair below the neck. And they've also got the Weed Whacker, which is for the ear and nose hair trimmer. They also have the Beard Hedger Pro, which is their newest appliance, you could say. It is meant to do exactly what it sounds like, take care of the beard. I was able to clean up everything, all the stubble I had. I was, when you guys know how it is being sick for a week, you don't feel like shaving. I was I was getting all this fluid in my head and I was really dizzy. So like the last thing I wanted to do was shave when I was really dizzy. That's just a recipe for disaster. So, I made sure I hopped in the shower and I cleaned up the neck beard. So I was no longer looking like Neckbeard the pirate. And because we have an important show to be on. So you can get all of this and more at manscaped.com and use promo code JD49. But overall in the draft, I thought that I would give the 49ers a solid B. Okay, I can't give them a solid A plus because you didn't see a player that was going to come in and just really take us over the top. That's going to be moving the needle in a huge way this season. I don't think unless I wouldn't even necessarily give the Eagles an A plus plus draft, because I think they maybe hit an A minus, but I think for us, without a first or second round pick, I just don't see you getting an A plus 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 draft. I think for where they are, it was exactly what you hoped for. They weren't reaching as far as for they filling an immediate need. They were looking for guys who fit what they do, and they were valuing them how they value them, and that's something that what we have seen. If there's anything that we can see from this team is that they trust the process, that they have their way of valuing guys, and they stick with that, and they obviously have been successful to the point. We haven't been able to get that Lombardi, but you look at the team, and there's a reason that they have one of the most stacked rosters, and the majority of this roster, the roster last season, were homegrown talent. So there is something to this process that they have, and something to the way that they scout players and they value them within their building. So just because we don't always value guys in the same way, we have to remember we're looking at it through their eyes, not our eyes. And so, as much as I really wanted Sidney Brown and I thought he was the guy, I'm going to trust that Jair Brown is a guy that fits their system. And maybe they wanted Sidney Brown and this was their number 2 pick, but it works out. Or a Cameron Latu is that same thing of when I was trying to pick a tight end and I kept saying Cameron Latu, I was trying to look at it through what I think the 49ers view things, not necessarily how I'm going to do it. So I can't give it I won't give it a like anything below a B, because I think they're sticking to their process, and that alone is worth grading well for. But I'm not going to give it a B plus because they picked a kicker in the 3rd round, and I cannot give any draft where you kick a picker in the 3rd round better than a B.
Yeah. And that tight end again is just still enough to take it down there as well.
Easy. That's my boy. That's my guy. Come on.
No, the one from Oklahoma.
Oh, sorry. Well,
No, not no.
okay,
I'm
okay,
okay with him. I guess I'm
okay,
okay with him. But
okay.
again, again, guys, thank you for all the support. Please share with your friends. Any Niner fan that you know needs to know about that channel. I humbly ask you that there isn't many better Niner content as far as going through the whys and hows of the game, his breakdowns and everything. I just get a front row seat and get to ask him some questions and have fun with you guys as well. So, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Take care of each other. And as always,